Hi, I am Julie, and I am a bisexual trans woman. I apologize for the quality of this video. Making presentations and things like that is not really my forte. I don't have an experience really doing this. But given the raft of anti-LGBT legislation that's coming out recently, and also the related activism, I felt that I would always feel guilty if I didn't take an opportunity to say something about what was going on, to at least communicate my thoughts and try to make a difference, cry out into the wind or something. Now, I don't have the arrogance to believe that this will change the minds of any real committed bigots, but hopefully it'll be found by some of the people that I think are on the edge and maybe uh, willing to support some of the conservative people, even if they feel that they aren't themselves particularly anti-LGBT. I think there's a group of people out there that have this feeling that they are not themselves personally anti-LGBT, that they have nothing against gay, bisexual, lesbian, trans people, um, but they believe that those activities should not be in public, should not be done in public, and um, that they may even be scared that, say, their children become some flavor of LGBT, and they feel that it's better to prevent these ideas from being aired in public in the hopes that it will, prevent their kids from going down what they feel is the wrong path. I understand that you may not want to have your child live a way that you think is um, more uncomfortable or difficult than they need to, but perhaps you aren't really you don't really understand the implications of the things that you are asking for here, and hopefully I can describe for you what that is like from my own experience, because I did live that way for 3 decades of my life, never speaking about any of these issues with anyone, always acting normal and hiding the dangerous thoughts inside myself. And it led me to a very dark and difficult place. Um, and I don't wish that experience on anybody else. So I grew up in Florida during the 90s. I do not live there anymore, and given the way that things are going right now, I don't think that I'll be going back there anytime soon, which is sad. I miss many things from that area. I miss the smell of pine trees on a warm summer afternoon. I miss the barbecue restaurants, the seafood places. I miss the beaches, of course. And I miss Saturday afternoon football on like Florida State's campus where I graduated. Um, I was very comfortable in the South. I don't dislike it really in any way, but like I said, I feel like I am no longer welcome there, and I am saddened by that. I've known since seventh grade that there was something different about me. That's when I first had a crush on my best friend at the time, and I had heard the word gay before that, but really all I knew was that it was a bad thing. It was a slur that people used to target other people and to make fun of them. And it was absolutely devastating to me when I found out that, in some sense, it applied to me at that time. It was incredibly scary. I had recurrent nightmares throughout my junior high and high school years that someone would find out about my secret thoughts, and that I would be chased through the high school or attacked or something like that. And I have the feeling that I could never, ever, ever speak with anybody about these things. I wasn't alone in that. No one that I knew of in my high school at the time was any flavor of LGBT. And of course, I'm sure there were plenty of us, but we never spoke about it because it was felt to be too dangerous at the time. You know, there was a definite threat of bullying and aggression. So I completely understand that no one spoke of it at the time, but it led my childhood and my teenage years to be isolating. I had very few friends, very few extracurricular activities. Basically, I went to class, I took my tests, got good grades, got through it, but I didn't really have much of a social life. Partly because of this, I was scared what anyone would think if they knew the actual me. I had many interests at the time that I felt were inappropriate for little boys, that I was embarrassed about. Pottery, photography, any sort of artsy stuff, gardening. Um, and I didn't want anybody to realize that I was interested in these topics. So when I would go to the library to check out books on them, first of all, I would wait until absolutely nobody was in the relevant aisle, and then I would quickly dart in and I would grab the book that I was trying to check out. And of course, before this, I had gone to something like the science fiction section or something to check out a book that would be appropriate for me, and then I would use that to hide the more embarrassing books that I was checking out as well. Now, nowadays, I realize that this was silly. Probably no one would notice, and I was just making something more extreme than it really needed to be. But at the time, this was absolutely life or death terrifying to me, and it had a huge impact on my life. There were other things as well. Like I wouldn't bring myself to dance or move weirdly in public because I thought it was too effeminate. I wouldn't sing in public as well because I felt, it was embarrassing. I would only wear clothes that were solid, muted colors, um, and so that no one could accuse me of being effeminate. Never anything like minty or God forbid pink, but anything like pastel colored, I never would have worn it at the time. Again, these things are silly, but I had such little confidence in myself, and I wanted to hide what I knew were dangerous feelings from everyone around me. So that's just how I lived. It's a huge impact on my life. I was constantly scanning for inappropriate things I might do that people might pick up on. It was very uncomfortable. Um, I tried to date over the years, um, typically women because I am bisexual, so I felt that those relationships were safe. However, uh, they never really worked out. And in retrospect, I realized it was because I wasn't comfortable playing the male social role in those kinds of relationships. I just didn't have the right vibes. Dating as a woman is very different than dating as a man, whether you're dating women or men. And it just doesn't work if you're trying to date as somebody that really isn't yourself. Your partner is going to realize that you're not being authentic, and the relationship is just going to not do very well. Now, I didn't realize that I was transgender, and actually until the COVID pandemic, really. I didn't even know what transgender was until I got to college, where I discovered some sketchy web comics and such. For many years after that, I would think to myself, I wish I was trans. These stories about people, it feels like they're living, their authentic lives. They feel genuine. They're very brave. But of course, I wouldn't even consider doing something like that. I wouldn't want to steal the valor of actual trans people, after all. That would be very arrogant on my part, I felt. Now, of course, now I realize that these were very silly ideas, but the education on LGBT issues when I was growing up was essentially non-existent. So I didn't really know what being transgender meant. So I never let myself explore my gender identity or anything like that. Essentially, I gave up trying to date. As I moved out of college and into my career, I lost the few friends that I had in college, um, until right before the pandemic. It got to the point where I was 60 pounds overweight. I was diabetic. I was living in a one-room apartment where the roof was leaking water. Um, and I didn't have any nice things or decorative objects. In fact, I thought at the time that wanting those kinds of things was was a sign of weakness, and that, living a more Spartan, practical life was a virtue. Silly now, but it was simply that, the things that I really wanted for myself, I couldn't bring myself to get because I felt that they weren't appropriate for me. And, I didn't have to live this way. I had a salary that would have been sufficient to live more comfortably, but I had no respect for myself. I didn't care really what happened to me. And this was a very dark place. I was extremely depressed. In retrospect, I was extremely depressed. And really, if I had kept going that way, it would have drastically shortened my life expectation. And my life was essentially empty. All I was doing was going back and forth to work, watching random internet videos, maybe playing some video games. My life was empty, meaningless, sad. The pandemic really gave me the opportunity to explore myself. It allowed me to open myself up to ideas that I had not allowed myself to consider before. It gave me an opportunity to explore my gender identity without having to feel pressured to go into work every day. Allowed me to start transitioning that way. I was able to, once I started transitioning, I found that I actually cared what I looked like. I was able to lose the weight that was causing all those health problems for me. I got my blood sugar back under control. I'm no longer considered diabetic. And I found myself a better place to live. I went out and got a better job with a significant pay increase rather than just drifting in the life that I'd had before. And I finally am in a stable relationship. I have a partner that I've been with for a little over a year, and it works well, way better than any attempts that I've done in the past. So it's hard to describe here, but after all this, my life is so much happier than it ever was before. I would never want to go back to that dark and depressing place that I was in before. And I am very disheartened by the things that I see in our political system right now, where people are essentially trying to push people into living their lives in the closet that way. And I just want anyone who's interested to know that what they're really asking here is that they are asking people to live an inauthentic and empty life in which they will not feel themselves. They won't be able to take pride in themselves. They'll be much, much less happy than they could be if they were able to live their authentic lives. And in the end, those lives will be shorter and sadder than they need to be. It's going to cause a tremendous amount of human suffering if these laws go forward and people are not allowed to access transgender care, or if, any sort of LGBT expression is pushed out of the public sphere. If vigilante attacks and things force more people into the closet because they feel it is unsafe, it is simply going to cause a tremendous amount of human suffering that I would not wish on anybody. So if you are following some of these, if you are supporting some of these conservative politicians, maybe for other reasons that you feel that the LGBT stuff is less important, and you feel that people can live their lives in the closet, and that's fine. I just wanted you to know what it is you are actually asking people to do, and the kind of damage that it will do to those people's lives. And ask you kindly to please do not support politicians that argue for these kinds of policies, because it is going to cause so much pain and suffering in people's lives. It is completely unnecessary. Thank you for listening. Hopefully things will improve, and I won't have to make any further videos on this sad sort of topic.